Welcome back to another episode of Home Court Health. I am your host, Tom Foolery, and today I come live to you with a poignant and pertinent public service announcement because, as the title of this podcast suggests, health has become a product. And I don't necessarily or exclusively mean this in the sense of people are obsessed with supplements or peptides or procedures. That's certainly part and parcel of it. And I'll depart from the alliteration for now because I've gone through this myself as I reflect on what has been probably about 12 years of being steeped in the research, practice, experience, and then relevant knowledge of as many things health, fitness, wellness, all of those monikers that people like to use. It started with, as I've talked about before, the very physical of pretty much just what can I do to be better at lifting weights and bigger. And I've been as heavy as 220-ish pounds in my life. I'm not nearly that right now, and people have been remarking on it recently, which is always a good ego check for a man because there are so many identity traps when you start walking down this path of prioritizing health. And a lot of it is numbers. And now, because this has been the bad directions that I've seen creep up over time, is the data trap. And I was never really, maybe it's just out of pure laziness, I don't know. I was never really induced to go down the route of wearables and data tracking. And I mean, I wore a heart rate monitor for maybe about a year or two, and I never did anything that extreme. It's not like I was out training for triathlons or Ironman or anything like that, where I do see some merit, for sure, to that level of data awareness. And still, what I came to realize about those devices is, number one, they are reliant upon Bluetooth technology, and that on top of your skin, your heart, your wherever your pulse is located, and to say nothing of the, because a lot of people now wear their wearables, if it's a Whoop or a Garmin, etc., they wear it around the clock. They wear it while they sleep. And even at that low level of application, to be constantly subjected to the pinging that goes on with Bluetooth devices is less than ideal, because that is one of those non-native electromagnetic frequencies that interrupt what is native and restorative to our bodies. Whatever the pulsing energy is within our bodies that regulates us and balances us, when we're constantly being pinged by, yeah, if it's wearables or a phone in the pocket or AirPods or anything like that, I mean, I don't think I'm too late to the game, because while these things are becoming, there is a lot of awareness that's being developed around the give and take with these wearables. So, I mean, is it a net good that you become more aware of your sleep score, for example? And my skepticism of that was immediate from the jump, because to ask the questions, what is the algorithm? What are the metrics for a sleep score? And with these wearables, with something like a Whoop, or why am I forgetting the other thing? The Oura Ring. Never was interested in the Oura Ring. I only just started wearing a ring anyway, and this feels highly natural, mostly because it's made of gold, and that feels right. Anyway, those scores are based on averages. So among all the average users and all of the average data that is compiled, and this gets into data tracking, data selling, biometrics, and all that go to people in places where we do not necessarily condone or consent to those places, to those destinations for our data, and we'll talk about that either today or at a later date. Then you're just getting an average, and this is one of my fundamental critiques of what we, I was going to say, what we have been led to believe, what we have assumed, what we have consumed, what has been fed to us as the standard of healthcare in most of the modern world. And that is this law of averages, that whatever average is taken from a drug trial or a protocol or a treatment, it's so obviously there are people in those environments, and still, as the joke was recently made to me, no one has 2.2 kids. Whatever these averages are, that's not really indicative. That's just a number, and that is just a math equation. That does not translate always. I'll leave room open for can we start with a basis there of an average. That does not always lead to clarity for the what I have learned is a wholly independent and individual approach to health. Yes, there are universal truths. Yes, there are reflections of nature that guide us back toward the simplicity of health. And still, by dint of just by fact of the average being what is used as the basis for something like a drug treatment, that at best will produce average results. And if you are someone in need of extraordinary healing, then you're SOL. Shit out of luck. And to dive even deeper on something like a drug or any sort of medicine, I'll take something that is deemed fairly innocuous, like ibuprofen. As an anti-inflammatory, the belief, the assumption is that will subdue whatever inflation is going on in your body. So you have a sore tennis elbow, let's say, and you take a couple ibuprofen before and after you play. And this is certainly more, there's a lot more awareness around this now. One of the side effects, also known as effects of that, whether it's prolonged consumption or I really think any dose of this is contributing to the decimation of stomach lining and what you then get as a truly compromised state of one of your core systems of your body, which is the digestive system. And as Dr. Moshe Daniel and I spoke about last week or the week before, or in the last episode, that anytime that you're under stress, you can say goodbye to the optimal functioning of at least one of your systems. It's your adrenal system, your digestive system, your circulatory system, your lymphatic system, your eliminative system, anything like that. If that's then diminished, then you're in a state of a weakened terrain. And so with something like ibuprofen, the point I'm driving at here is that while you might be taking this for a specific purpose, there is no drug. I am always open to being wrong, as I've embraced saying. My mantra has become, I may be wrong, but I'm not lying. And so trust me on this when I say, to the best of my awareness, there is no drug that has a purely isolated impact. Meaning, when you take something for anti-inflammation, when you take something that is for your liver, for your kidney, for your heart, there really has been no way to test or ensure that that is the only system of your body, that is the only organ of your body being impacted. Which is understandably, with a holistic perspective, that seems increasingly obvious to me, because it's not like the smoked brisket I just had is only for my stomach. It impacts my fascia. It impacts my lymph. It impacts my blood. It impacts, therefore, the oxygen levels in my body. It impacts my collagen. So it's manifold and myriad, the impact that any one element that we consume. And I don't even get into what is the composition of a brisket in terms of proteins and fats, etc. I think those are moving targets. I really do. And this goes back to the data point, or the data theme, that because at some point, and maybe it's not fair to say I was never induced to go down this obsessive path with data tracking and all that. A little bit, because as an athlete, people talk about gamifying. How can you gamify your fitness and your health. And some people do dig into that. I feel the honesty of that some people do enjoy saying, well, that's 7 days in a row of 100 grams of protein, and good for you. Still, what I see as a severe limitation for that is that we stay on the level of the purely physical, of the purely tangible, the quantifiable elements of health. Capital H health is indeed universal. We all have some experience with excellent health or suboptimal health or somewhere in between. And to only, or to even in a majorative way, fixate upon the quantitative is missing the mark, because even something like food, what I have spoken about before, the imperative quality of sourcing for food. It's not to say that if your choices are market basket, ground beef, or just something from McDonald's, then there's still a superior quality to what's coming from the grocery store. I think that's not a clear line in that example. There's a difference though between market basket beef and the one that you buy from your farmer for a cow that there's only been 12 of them at a time, and they graze on just the grass, maybe a little grain finish, but it's from the place 5-10 miles up the road from you, and so it carries the energy of your immediate environment. And those are things that are not quantifiable, and yet absolutely unequivocally impact your health for the bioresonance or the electrical coherence. If I'm to say this more simply, the grounding effect of if you eat or consume something from very, very far away. Imagine, for instance, that you're more in tune or more hyper aware of the politics of what goes on in China versus what is going on in your own town. Then you're talk about a lack of presence. Then you're really not in that state of groundedness, of embodiment, where you can say, I am where I am. Wherever I am, there I am. And it's very much the same with food, is if the sourcing is dissonant and for animal flesh, I think this is the most one-to-one relative example, is that if you are eating the flesh of an animal that was factory farmed, and I'm going to have to find because there's a lot of labels out there that are cruelty-free or conflict-free, and someone did a great TikTok video that I shared recently on my Instagram of conflict chicken, where they talk about that they dump cold water on the chickens to wake them up, and they make one of my favorite parts was they said they make the father chicken pick one child that he wants to save, and the rest can get killed, and then the chickens have to live with the reality that their father wanted them dead. I mean, it's psychological warfare for chickens, and it's cruelty farms. I'm definitely gonna find that and link it in the show notes, because you got to laugh at this stuff. And still, so if you ate that chicken or those chickens' eggs, it makes sense, like most living beings do, that there is some retention of that fear, that anxiety, that unaliveness that would come from, instead of being a chicken that gets to roam in a pasture and eat bugs and eat grass and eat whatever it wants all day long and live mostly how it wants, then that gets passed on through the flesh and the blood and the collagen and all of those energy stores of an animal. So all of it to punctuate this point, that there are most certainly intangible, qualitative aspects of health, especially things that we are that warrant consumption. So the things that sustain us, and there are those of us who learn how to do more with less, and there absolutely are people who can do better in a fasted state or with a lot less food. And so that's why I am keen on inspiring people to do the hard yards of becoming a flexitarian, being an adaptive, intuitive man or woman, so that you can engage on a very sensitive level to what your needs are and those should change from day to day and moment to moment. For instance, I posted a picture earlier today of what I had for breakfast, and it was nice couple helpings, a couple tablespoons of sauerkraut, eggs that we picked up from the farmers market recently, which is down the road from us, and a lot of the farms are, from southern New Hampshire or northern Massachusetts, so still in our local atmosphere. Raw cheddar cheese, the smoked brisket that I made that was a pasture raised beef brisket, reheated with butter and some bone broth, and Pacha. Shout out to Pacha. I'm doing my best to get the founder of Pacha because it's buckwheat sourdough, English muffins, and things like that. So a nice little treat to bring that home. And one of the points that I would make with something like that is it's not like I'm going to have those things every single day just because I think that is good for me. And that's another thing coming from the world of powerlifting and bodybuilding adjacent, that chicken broccoli rice, or chicken and rice, those things that just because you think they're good on paper, those are the staples of your diet. The only daily items of my diet, meaning I consume them every single day, are air and water, breath and water. That's really it. There's nothing that I say, oh, I have to have. Now, the distinction that is helpful to me is plants versus animal foods, because plants is whether you're obsessing about greens or grains or whatever, and fruits. The more we get into subcategories and macros versus micros, etc. Those games are exhaustive, and I don't feel as though they lead to the intuition and the truly adaptive, flexible, seasonal, personal approach to nourishment that I have found to be, and also I'll loop that in a moment. This is why it's not a product. I can't sell a diet program. I can ask the leading questions. I can encourage and hold people accountable to the reflection, the conversations with one's body of how does this make me feel? What kind of energy do I have? What are my bowel movements like? What are my energy rhythms like when I eat X, Y, or Z? So those are templates, and those are, I was going to say protocols. Those are just options. The menu might be small. Instead of saying this is the way to eat, paleo or vegan or ancestral, whatever. And it does require experimentation. And there's almost nothing I told myself as I became more of an adult with food specifically, that there's pretty much nothing that I'm going to eat that's going to make me throw up or diarrhea or something like that, or die. And I've tested the limits of that, eating raw meat that I've left out for 2 days, and certainly things like raw milk and drinking my own urine. And that's really the gamut of it that I can see for now. And so again, these things are not products. This is a process of self-discovery, of truly scientific experimentation, where we are all tasked with the opportunity to go within and to plug and play with different, and whatever advice you get, whatever your favorite influencer says that you should or could be eating, give it a try and see how you feel. And still, there are plenty of stories of people who have continued to move the goalposts on what is right for them, because what if it's 10 years of being a vegan and then your health crashes? What if it's 10 years of being a carnivore and then your health crashes? So instead, I think there is some degree of variability. It doesn't have to be a massive spectrum of variability. It could be fairly narrow compared to what the grocery store has on offer, because there's a lot of things. Gosh, what do I eat at a grocery store? 1%, 5% of what's there, maybe. I understand that there's things that are, no, yeah, I feel pretty good about that. Maybe 1% of what's on offer at the grocery store I eat. Well, I'll say 1 to 5%, but think about that. And there are people who eat plenty of the other stuff that's on offer, and maybe they really don't know what's best. And I give a lot of credit to my mother, Shout out to mom, because it was such a blessing growing up to have the lion's share of my meals made at home. And even if I did go for the occasional Eggo waffle in the morning because it's fucking 5:45 and I want to have something. Actually, for many years it was my dad making me from relatively from scratch eggs Benedict because I just had an obsession with hollandaise sauce. So I'd have a nice fatty hollandaise sauce with a couple poached eggs and English muffin on butter to and ham and Canadian bacon to start my day. So you can do worse. Otherwise, though, with so many of the meals being homemade, that requires real food to do just that. And so, aside from the sourcing, I was grateful that I started to develop this instinct that food really was not what was contained in a box or could be easily. I at least had that distinction. And I don't know that a lot of people do. And this was something that I was fleshing out as I start to build the language that I can share with people via online threads, that if you have never thought deeply, and I mean deeply, about your food and your water and all the things that you consume to sustain you, then you're being extremely casual about the building blocks of your life. And I don't think that health only comes down to food. People like to do that as, oh, it's all about how you move, or it's all about how you eat, or it's all about how you love and your relationships. So of course it's everything. And depending on different seasons in life, there's a shift in the balance in terms of what is priority. And so perhaps it's because most people are too distracted, exhausted, uninterested, and defer the authorship, the authority of what is right for them to someone else, assumptions, beliefs of what's been inherited, that they have not thought deeply about that which sustains them. And at some point, food does become a priority for people. Either your digestive systems are inefficient, or it's being overfat, overweight, obese. Certain choices lead to the malfunction of other systems in the body. And so I believe some people are led to that cornerstone of diet at some point or another. And it's very much a process. And so what I offer then as a holistic health coach is, in the same way that people may not be willing to be the sole arbiter or influencer of their finances, or as a realtor as well, not everyone is equipped with the time, energy, resources, and know-how to sell their home themselves or navigate the buying process. Navigating the buying process might be a little bit easier. Still, it's a full-time job to have someone manage that and keep everything on track, and that's why you hire professionals. And so it's not so that I can do the thinking for you. It's not so that I can supplant your intellecting abilities, your reasoning capacities. It's to educate. That's really my goal as a coach, is to educate. And there are coaches, and this is a similar thing with how people approach the movement side of health, is they say, I would prefer to buy a program, or I would hire someone to write the program for me so I don't have to think about that. And I as I do, I absolutely understand that desire. And still, I really can't help myself as a teacher and coach to, maybe I have to trick people and explain a little bit of the why behind. But it's mostly because, and I tell people this, especially on the tennis court, explicitly on the tennis court, that it's much more of an imperative that you start to cultivate the faculty of learning that is the inner awareness of, when I do something and I miss. I mean, tennis, we get pretty much instant feedback, although there's a lot of ways to get a ball over the net. So some people, and we say tennis isn't confusing, it's totally confusing, because you can shank a ball off the frame and it goes in and you win the point. And what do you say? I won the point. Does it mean it was a good shot? Does it mean the technique was there? Does it mean that will keep you injury free? No, no, and no. And still, people are deceived because winning becomes the imperative. And it's my habit that I'm blending with other habits to slow things down so that people have the ability to tune into themselves and say, what did I do? because it's much more important that they be able to determine with firsthand knowledge, with inner awareness, what they did right or wrongly or somewhere in between, some blend of the two, versus just me observing that to them. As I can be a mirror to people, still the skill building is, and this is where I have found tremendous growth, and a lot of it is being playful in the gym, is having that deeply curious nature of how my body is moving and what does it mean if I shift the weight to the ball of my foot versus the heel of my foot, externally rotate, swivel, spiral, bring my ribs into line, set my shoulders down, get the tongue on the roof of my mouth. There's many variables to play with that impact then how we move. And no coach is going to be able to give me the immediate feedback forever when I do that. I mean, there are world-class coaches who can look at an imbalance, a weight shift, a postural compensation, and help people correct and bring the awareness to that. And that's part of the learning process. Otherwise, I believe the paramount aspiration is to develop that inner awareness where you start to say, I know what just happened there, or I at least have an inkling. And now I ask myself, especially as we say in tennis, you don't focus on the mistake, you focus on the correction. Because if all we do is harp on our mistakes, that is a positive feedback loop that just keeps us in that perpetuation of error making and inefficiency, suboptimal choices. And it's a cliche because it's true. When you know better, you do better. So I've been confronted with this before, and I'm pretty sure I'll be confronted by it again, that not everyone is seeking that level of challenge. Not everyone, regardless of where they are on rewriting their health story, is that level of open to receiving that invitation to go within. And still, as has become my coaching mantra, it's my goal to really enter through the portal of body awareness, and that becomes self-awareness. And that seamlessly, in my experience, and this is where I don't feel especially unique, that seamlessly opens more portals to the rich inner depths of the mental, emotional, spiritual, relational aspects of ourselves. And that is the most noble adventure. This is why I have committed my life's work, my vocation, to walking with people in the process of health. And I mean, it occurs to me, intimately related to something like happiness, or even joy making, happy making. That being one of the four corners of the four doctor system lineage that I grew up in, or learned from Paul Chek and Chek Institute, that happiness really is the chief physician. That you imagine you lock in your diet and you're a masterful mover and you are disciplined with your quiet time and your disconnection, and the happiness piece is missing, then health will likely elude you. And still, imagine if you touch a lot of happiness and the movement is great and the diet is keyed in once again, but there's really no time for quiet and introspection. And that might be the outlier, because I do feel like the happiness would inspire more of that. So yeah, there are ways where if Dr. Happiness is not satisfied with the quality of health, then capital H health, holistic health, well-rounded health, full, relentless, resilient, regenerative vitality can be imbalanced, to be sure. And so this is clearly a process. This is clearly an evolution, a story. That's why I'm framing it as such, because like happiness, there is no one attainment and then that's a wrap for life. There is no moment where you say, I've realized happiness, and then nothing comes in the way to get you off of that magical cloud. And it's very much the same with health, is environment. You can go through the inventory, the litany of environmental toxins. It's all capital S stress, and as I've seen the yeah, I mean it's fun and entertaining to reflect on having been tapped into health and fitness as an industry. And every industry has its own characters, its own heritage, its own culture. And one of the things that I was thinking of the other day, that every industry as well has its own dictionary. Every industry really has its own language. So the tennis industry has its own. I tell people that the two languages I know are English and tennis, is because I can speak the language not of biomechanics in tennis or jargon. That's part of it. It's what are the creative ways that I can use to describe the different strokes and tactics and as many elements of tennis as possible. And then there's also jargon. I mean, a medical dictionary has to be one of the thickest physically in the world. Maybe engineers are up there, and it's not like those things are made up. It's just a different language that people, the average layman does not totally understand. And the health and fitness, health and wellness industry is very much the same, where they have their own jargon, their own language that they can sort of dangle in front of people in order to entreat them, in order to sell them and pitch them. And of course, it's a totally different beast these days, because what is most accessible to people are products, are buy my program, buy this protocol, buy. I am seeing more of the shift to the mentorship and the one-on-one work that I offer, and that's inspiring. And still, it's yeah, it's an inundation still with do this one thing and it'll all be all right. And where I am ready, willing, and able to walk with people is to say, we're going to go deliberately through a series of, if there are obstacles or if there are targets, whatever people need to address in order to, because as I've spoken about before, some people need to do less in order to be more. Some people need to do more in order to be more. Because if you have not mastered the small things, the big things will kill you. And I've seen that to be relevant in tennis, where that's my laboratory right now, is something small like a grip, how you hold the racket. Imagine if I've got my water bottle and I held it like this, basically with my thumb down, and tried to drink like this. I'd fuck up my wrist if that was something I did every day, multiple times a day. Highly inefficient. And yet, that is what we see in the world of tennis, and that can not literally kill people, but it can kill their game and kill their confidence and take them out with injury and things like that. So, the answer is not, when I offer one-on-one lessons with people, that's not a product. Is we're going through a process. The product is the lesson. I get that. What is contained within is the process. And when you think of something like, so peptides are very much in vogue right now, and to step back just a little bit to revisit my time as a card-carrying member of the coaching industry, which started with getting my, whatever they're called, NSCA or CSCS, whatever certification for personal training that teaches all these mechanical, mechanistic things about the body, which we conflate with health. I mean, and there's some excellent trainers out there. I know many of them who just do the gym thing and just help people on that level. It's one element to health, and it's definitely not all of it. And if someone has never moved their body in a healthful way, then it's a necessary investment, to be sure. I have spent the time acquiring the skills to do as many, or to teach as many aspects of health as I can. And wherever my limitations are, I know people who have been doing it longer and with more wisdom and excellence than I have, and that's one thing I offer as well, is referrals. All that to say that I've seen the different trends, such as it is now, because now they can take on new life with social media. The trends of even just with how people approach what they consider to be capital H health. So for years it was anything stress and how do you reduce stress. And I mean that is like going to the doctor's office and they say, well, your blood work is jacked up, or you've got this going on. Reduce stress. That's a prescription. Okay. And how will I do that, doc? And that would warrant a deep delve into a person's life, which homeopaths I've come to learn are one of the only industry professionals who do that. Is it's a it's a professional standard for many homeopaths to do 2-hour intake sessions, which are not entirely therapy sessions, but it's to learn as much all in and on of a person's health story, their life story, as possible, to find out where does trauma originate, where does stress come from, what are the stories you tell yourself that keep you stagnant and limited and weak. And so, I mean, we all know the cliches about doctors and their limited time and where their allegiances lie in terms of insurance and liability and all that. And so that's why the bridge is being built away from that. But it's very much the same with various other health and fitness professionals. And there's charlatans and snake oil salesmen in any industry. What is being called forth now is the deeply personal, intimate, authentic work of being coached. Because no AI is going to have, they might have the patience. Actually, I don't think an AI will have the patience to sit with you and ask the necessary questions and offer the right nudges, the instinctive nudges that you get from sitting across from a person or walking with them. And so, not that it can't. I mean, I try not to second guess the tool that is AI, the inner authority, as opposed to the artificial intelligence, IA, the inner authority, the inner authorship, the inner awareness that is the antidote to AI dependence, is, I think, the most, I feel to be the most valuable currency that is gaining in value. And it can be learned. And so much of learning is just self-confirmation. Is, I believe we've all had the experience of reading something, watching something, learning something that feels like new information, and yet there's the stillness and the inaudible, I see, that feels right. But some people get truth or clear knowledge as a big jolt. And well, fuck, I mean, I never thought of that. I really never thought of that. And at first it feels discombobulating and distracting if it just, as we say, moves you off your center. If your center is this place of seriousness or the ego game of identity, where you feel like you've always been like this, or I'm always going to be like this, and something moves you off of that, that is very much part of the health process as well. And so going through the peaks and valleys of health exploration, self-exploration, is the most noble pursuit. Noble meaning valuable, meaning something that raises your level of, it raises your principles and your priorities to the point where then it enmeshes itself with your life for life. That when you make health making and happy making your ultimate goal, then I've seen how that inspires people to become so open-minded and open-hearted and deeply curious, to constantly be asking, does that grow corn? Does that really work for me? Is that really true? And as I've said many times, instead of saying that's not true, you say, is that true? Is that really true for me? And I believe truth is what works. Truth is what heals. And so anything short of that, to say nothing of something that is antithetical or in stark opposition to what is going to heal and create happiness in one's life, then those are usually excellent signals of things that we can do differently. So in an effort to glide into port here and dock the ship, my concluding message would be to become aware of our highly consumer-based materialistic conditioning, which says, what can I buy? What can I accrue? What can I claim and grasp that is then going to give me the feeling that I'm chasing? And I don't think any external thing is going to give you the inner feeling that you're chasing. So invite a process. Welcome the adventure of asking, what can I do? What can I do first to become more free, healthier, more loving, more embodied, more resourceful, more resilient? And if you really don't know, going back to this example of don't focus on the mistake, focus on the correction. If you do not really know what the correction is or what a different path you can take, then you come ask me, you come ask someone who you think is a viable resource for whatever that question is, and usually that leads to even more questions, and then you're off, and then you've flown the sail, and you're as I come into harbor here, you're leaving, and and as the saying goes as well, if you don't know where you're going, any port will do. So to have good examples of what vital, sustainable health looks like is extremely important right now, and it's tough to get just virtually because anyone can fabricate or manipulate like that. So trust your senses. Cultivate that ability to trust all of your senses, and it's not just the five that we can name: instinct, intuition, reasoning. A lot of these things are senses that can only be learned. All teaching is self-knowledge. So invite that process of health through whatever season. Right now we're in the season of summer, and energy is abundant, and the sun is out, and it's hot, and it's so easy to go do and be active, and trust that feeling. I mean, go into that and know that there will be different cycles and times that we adapt to, and pick one process. Choose one process that you feel called toward mastery of. If it's the process of having a better understanding of what you eat, or how you hydrate, or how you move, or how you relate, or how you develop your own sense of rhythm. Those are all, I mean, and that is the highly personal side of this. And if you work with a coach, that's someone who can help you look at whatever you've laid out as the elements of your life, and then prioritize, and then come up with a game plan. And that's what I offer. I've been game planning for myself all this time for 12 years. To quote Always Sunny, I've been in charge of pretty much every decision in my life for 32 years now. So definitely more so now than ever. And that's where so much freedom is being able to embrace and get stoked about every decision that we get to make, and not feel the obligations that may be imposed upon us. Health is the journey that is really only taken inwardly, and then we get to enjoy the fruits of our labors of love. So health is a process and not a product, and I know that you'll come back with stories, as will I, of that magical, wonderful adventure. So until then, go do all the things to nourish your terrain. Get outside, breathe in the fresh air, look into the sun, go for a swim, move your body, rest it, eat, hydrate, laugh, dance, sing, play, anything and everything that you need to do. It is all welcome. And it's been my pleasure, and I thank you for listening to this podcast today. You know there's more coming, so I'm not going anywhere. Stick around. More wealth of wisdom is on the way.